All right, let's dive right into one of the most mysterious and, let's be honest, terrifying books ever written, the Book of Revelation. For thousands of years, it's been the go-to source for visions of the end of the world. You know the stuff I'm talking about, visions of strange beasts, terrible plagues, cosmic battles. For 2 millennia, we've pretty much all agreed that this is a roadmap to the apocalypse, the ultimate playbook for doomsday.
But what if we've had it completely backwards this whole time? That's the core of a really provocative theory from Noel Robertson Platt. His argument is that the true meaning of Revelation isn't about what's to come, but about what's already happened.
So, according to this idea, Revelation isn't a crystal ball predicting the future. Instead, it's an incredibly elaborate and symbolic story, an allegory, for the very first Easter. We're talking about the events around the death and resurrection of Jesus, back in Jerusalem around 30 AD. And just look at this comparison. The difference is night and day, right? On one side, you've got the common view, a scary book about the future. But this new interpretation, it completely flips the script. It says Revelation is a symbolic testimony to something that happened long ago, and it was written for a very specific reason. So why write such a complicated code? Well, the theory goes that the author, the Apostle John, was trying to fight back against a controversial idea that was spreading at the time, something called Docetism. This was the belief that Jesus wasn't really a physical human being, that he was more like a ghost or an illusion. So by writing this wild spiritual vision that was secretly about real physical flesh and blood events, John was making a powerful statement. No, this all really truly happened. Okay, so if this book really is a code, how in the world do we start to crack it? Well, the key, it turns out, isn't just about what you read, but when you imagine you're reading it from.
The best way to think about it is like a time machine. We have to stop reading from our 21st century perspective. Instead, I want you to imagine you're right there, standing with the disciples in 30 AD, just as Jesus is telling them what's about to happen to him. Suddenly, when the book says these events must soon take place, it actually makes sense, solving a 2,000-year-old timing puzzle.
And this verse right here is a huge piece of the puzzle. The theory argues that when the author uses the word prophecy, he doesn't mean predicting the future, like a fortune teller. To him, prophecy means testimony. It means being an eyewitness telling people what you saw happen.
And this changes everything. It means Revelation isn't a crystal ball at all. It's what's known as kerygma. That's a Greek word for a public proclamation, a testimony. So in this view, the whole book is just the Apostle John's personal eyewitness account of what he saw, told using this incredibly dramatic and symbolic language. Okay, so now we get to what the theory calls the smoking gun. This is where we look at the actual structure of the book, and where the whole allegorical map starts to look less like a theory and more like a blueprint. So, check this out. When you take the main story chapters of Revelation, 16, 17, 18, and 20, and lay them out, they match the sequence of the Easter story perfectly. Chapter 16 lines up with the Passion, Chapter 17, the death, 18, the burial, and finally Chapter 20, the resurrection. The argument is that a one-to-one match like this is just too precise to be a coincidence.
But does it really work when you dig into the details? Let's put this whole idea to the test. We're going to zoom in on one specific chapter, Revelation 15, which this theory claims is a direct, symbolic retelling of Jesus' trial before the Roman governor Pontius Pilate. So this table lays it all out. On the left, you've got the strange, mystical visions from the book itself. And on the right, the real-world historical events they supposedly represent. Let's break this down piece by piece. All right, first up, the vision. John sees these victorious figures who are standing on what he calls a sea of glass. Now, in this kind of writing, that's classic imagery for a heavenly throne room or a place of divine judgment. But here's the twist. According to this theory, that sea of glass isn't some mystical place in the heavens. It's an allegory for something very real and very physical. The stone pavement, known in Hebrew as Gabbatha, where the Gospels tell us Jesus literally stood for his trial in front of Pilate. Okay, next piece of the puzzle. The vision says these figures are singing the Song of the Lamb. But here's what's so fascinating, and it's a critical detail. Throughout the entire book of Revelation, the Lamb never actually speaks. Not one word. So what if this song isn't a sound at all? What if it's a powerful metaphor for the exact opposite? For silence? This would be an allegory for Jesus' famous, profound silence in front of his accusers, just like the old prophecies said, a lamb silent before its shearers.
And finally, for the last piece of this chapter's vision, you get this super dramatic moment. 7 angels come out of a temple, and they're holding 7 golden bowls filled with the wrath of God. Judgment is clearly about to go down.
Now, the proposed historical connection here is, wow, it's incredibly specific. Think about this. At the exact same time of day that Pilate was passing his final judgment on Jesus, the actual temple in Jerusalem would have been opening for the morning sacrifice. And what were the priests doing during that ritual? They were collecting sacrificial blood in golden bowls. The vision of angels with bowls of wrath becomes a perfect symbol for priests with bowls of blood at the very moment of judgment.
So let's zoom back out. If this one chapter can be decoded with this much detail, what does that mean for the entire book? Well, the implications of reading Revelation as a prophecy of the past are massive. I mean, it completely reframes the whole thing. Suddenly, it's not a terrifying script for the future, but a rich, symbolic testimony of the past. It solves that 2,000-year timing problem, it gives us a clear reason why the author wrote it, and it provides a coherent explanation for all that bizarre imagery, grounding everything in the foundational story of the Christian faith. Which leaves us with one heck of a question, doesn't it? Is it possible that the one book we've always looked to for answers about the end of the world was actually meant to be a profound story about its beginning? Perhaps the greatest mystery of Revelation isn't what's going to happen, but what has already happened.